Hey, welcome to On the Chain. Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff here with co-host Chip. What is going on, everybody? What's going on, Chip? Exposing the truth. That's what today's show is going to be about, exposing the reality and the truth. Biden's mental state, the lies, the media cover-ups, a national threat. Maybe this is another case to be made for DeFi, for cryptocurrency. We'll have to get into it. There's some good dynamics with this. We have a lot of good topic to cover, and there's been a lot of good commentary over what happened this past week, which was a disaster, and it's going to be a lot of fun digging in and workshopping it tonight. So get ready.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Do it.
Welcome to On the Chain.
I think we got to play the long version. That's like 17 minutes. That 17-minute open we used to have. That was a lot of fun. And it was the conservative twins. Now, what are they known as today? I don't even know what they're known as. Used to be the crypto twins. They're like, that's the longest open I've ever seen. I was like, well, there's actually one out there that's longer. But yeah, I'm gonna die.
Everybody give a quick shout out to where you're tuning in from as you tune in. If you're watching on the rewatch, put it in the comments below. Let us know where you guys are tuning in.
Yeah, and what's on your mind tonight? Like, what are you thinking? What's going on? I know it's on Sophie's mind. There it is.
What is
a big wave in there?
Mind?
What's on your mind tonight? We got Kelly checking in. What's shaking?
Exposing the truth.
Because I was shaking. Remember that song?
Oh, yes.
That was a good one.
If you're watching on Rumble, hit the follow button on Rumble.
Yeah, hit that follow button on Rumble. We got to build our audience over there. It's really fantastic.
We need a big audience on Rumble. Iowa. Kelly's coming in from Iowa, so that's pretty cool. We got Pennsylvania.
Iowa.
Really nice.
Let's talk about this EU story. This is interesting, Jeff. This EU story. You want to pull it up on your side? Or you want me to pull it up?
Yeah, go ahead. Do you have it up already?
I do.
Not all. Okay. Go ahead and pull that up real quick.
Let's go through here and sort of like check this out, because this is
some workshopping here.
There's some workshop, and the EU prepares for crypto leap of faith. Look at that. I like the title of that.
Like the title. That's what stood out, Chip. The leap of faith. But then as we dig in, maybe it's not such a good leap after all. Well, let's find out. At least they're doing something. No, you can't say that much here.
Yeah, at least they're making some way, Welcome to the so the landmark regulation on crypto assets come into effect over this weekend, but its distorting effect has already been felt in the market. And I always wonder, how do you always say this? This is MiCAR, which is the markets in crypto assets regulation. Rolls right off your tongue. Look, we got another OG back in here. Think about that. MiCAR, I guess. It's worth marking. For better or worse, it's the very first stab at a comprehensive framework for trading and owning crypto assets, or providing relative services. And then the first 2 of 7 parts covering stablecoins come into effect on June 30th, which is today, Jeff. Well, it's already it's already in the UK. It's already the first already, right? And then the regulation is intended, this is always good, Jeff. What it's intended to do is unleash the full potential of crypto assets to help businesses and consumers, while also applying the same sort of legal protections that consumers in stocks and bonds receive. Its unspoken purpose was to hammer projects like Meta's ill-fated Libra stablecoin into tight regulatory box. You remember that, Jeff? That just went nowhere in a hurry. It was dead on arrival, pretty much.
Quickly dead. Libra dead.
It just never even got out of like the box. It just was dead. But on the eve of its grand entrance, MiCAR is already looking dated and likely to deter innovation and restrict EU citizens and companies from using products available elsewhere in the world, say critics. It's, when they start talking about we're going to bring the same protections that those who buy stocks and bonds, it sounds like the SEC over here, right? They're going to protect us, Jeff. They're going to protect us from who? It's always
exactly. It's
a interesting dichotomy.
Definitely a little bit concerning, as they get into it. Is it going to be something that is going to provide a path to development, to building? Because right now, as we look at it, for the most part, if you were to compare most of the Euro markets with the US markets in terms of building from a development perspective and rolling out some of the technology, Here we're handcuffed. It's like trying to build something with both your hands, handcuffed behind your back. There, at least there was some movement because we see crypto companies building. Now it looks like they're going to try to take one of the hands and at least tie them to the side of the builder's body, so that way it's just going to make it a little bit more complex, especially. So we'll have to see as it starts rolling out if this is accurate. If it's already based on outdated information and doesn't look like it's going to be positive and is going to make it more difficult or impossible for them to use certain products that you could use, how is that going to benefit? So
Yeah.
exactly where are we going with this?
Well, it just goes to show you how fast it's moving. Like they say here, as with all regulation, MyCar struggles to keep up with the market developments. First of all, it doesn't cover staking, while service providers that offer a fully decentralized service without any intermediary are outside the scope of rules, which is odd because that's the whole point, the not having an intermediary and being fully decentralized. But it already appears to be having an impact. Last month, U.S. group Paxos announced the creation of Lyft, a stablecoin pegged to the U.S. dollar that will offer. You notice nobody ever pegs these to like the Turkish lira. You never notice that, Jeff? Like they don't peg it to
Or the Chinese yuan,
or the Chinese yuan, or India's
or the India's rupee,
right? They just don't. I mean,
or the Russian ruble.
it wouldn't be so stable. Well, I think the ruble's better today since it's backed by gold, but
Getting better.
it's getting there, right? So it says MyCar prevents stablecoins from paying any type of interest, including staking rewards. Stablecoin operators such as Paxos also need to hold at least 30% of the reserves in an EU recognized bank, potentially rising to 60% depending on the size of the coin. These days, it's not so easy finding banks willing to take on crypto business, creating a problem largely because beyond the control of the companies that need to comply. So it's like there's just gonna be like this massive clashing going on. And as much as we like to think that parts of Europe, like the UK, were doing really well, and other parts, I don't know. Anytime the EU, the European Union, tries to do something blanket, there's too many chefs in the kitchen.
Definitely too many chefs.
And we're going to get this like gobbledygook stuff. So MyCar also restricts stablecoin operators to a threshold of either 1 million transactions or 200 million euros per day. Already more than 95% of total stablecoin activity in US denominated coins, such as Tether, USDC, and DAI. And at the same time of writing, more than 50 billion has been traded in the past 24 hours. But again, this is probably written a couple years ago, and it's just going into effect. Also doesn't reflect reality on the ground, said one executive of stablecoin operator. It also lending some impressive legal gymnastics. This week's Swarm Markets, a Berlin crypto group, said it would begin trading gold, but with a twist. MyCar makes it difficult to launch asset-backed tokens based on gold and other commodities which are fungible, which is, again, another oddity, but it's not in the legislation. So the metal is represented on a blockchain as an NFT, much like normal gold trading. The metal itself will sit in a vault in London. So there's all these like little outliers that aren't being taken into effect here.
Right. I like that. I do like the concept of having an NFT rollout that has its value backed by something. So if you can have a representation of physical metal sitting in a storage someplace, whether ideally in a recognized location, whether it's in the UK or Switzerland or someplace where where you can have some confidence of audit. But I think that's a great move forward in terms of utility of NFTs. So the question is, why would MyCar make it more difficult to impossible to allow something like that? What would be a motivation? Again, if it's based on old, outdated concept where we hadn't even got to this point yet, there hasn't been a ramp up of NFTs when they started working on it.
True.
They haven't adjusted yet. Or as they bring these regulations into being starting today, are they going to start developing? Are they going to start amending? And is it going to start embracing where we're at right now? technology-wise.
But Jeff, isn't it somewhat refreshing to be criticizing somewhere outside of the U.S. for once, since usually everyone's have all their shit together, right? It's like the first time, because usually we're talking about how pathetic the SEC is, but I'm starting to see a lot of parallels, right? Because this next part is that it potentially restricts other innovations. So an emerging trend this year has been tokens that act like stable coins, but they offer like some kind of an interest to holders for lending them out, and they include tokenized treasury funds run by the likes of like BlackRock, you got Franklin Templeton, and the transactions are recorded on blockchain like Ethereum. Then some professional crypto traders and brokers are exploring their use as collateral on the token. But my car is an adjunct to existing EU market rules. It's designed to capture financial assets that cannot be covered by the EU's big post 2008 legislation, such as MiFID II, and tokens that offer the security like yield, like for rewards for staking, would fall under MiFID II. Under then too many. What is this? MiFID. My car regulatory experts say the whole point of it is like there's a lot. It's very problematic. Ethereum may not qualify as a book entry for CSD. If it's a digital CSD isn't available, then the tokenized security has to be converted back to equity, then rendering the process of putting the product on the blockchain questionable exercise. Bottom line here is, without going the rest of it, it's just this is what happens. We're moving so fast that by the time legislation hits and goes through, it's already extinct, right? It's already old. But again, I think sometimes when you try to restrict too many moving pieces, this is what you're going to get. It's not going to cover, the innovation that we're looking for. It should be a little bit more broad. And the whole idea of decentralization seems to be left in the cold here as well. Like the whole idea of crypto is you don't need an intermediary, and you want it to be decentralized, truly decentralized. But a lot of this legislation talks about, stable coins, which you can do. You can't do staking. You can't do, tokenization can't be backed by like a precious metal, which is odd. But again, this is
Very odd.
Good, refreshing for us. Of course it would be. I mean, but it's kind of, I'm just glad that we're actually, because most of the time we're talking about how fantastic. Because if you look at England has a very robust, 3 prongs, right? It's either a security, but it could be any one of them. It could be a security, it could be decentralized. There's a couple different ways, or it could be all 3. I don't remember what the third one was, but someone in the chat will remember. But anyway, it's interesting to see how this shakes out. Meant to be a good thing. Turns out it's going to be kind of a thorn. So
hopefully it actually does develop. If they start making it more difficult for growth and builders over in EU countries, what is that going to say for here? Well, and maybe as we start to gain some momentum with some regulatory clarity in the US, which is going to happen sometime in the 25 to 26 timeline. So as that starts to happen and the EU makes it more complex, projects start coming back to the US with regulatory positive environment versus right now it's an unknown variable. Right now it's extremely difficult. You take risk by moving in the space and building and developing, because you never know when the SEC is going to come knocking on your door. And from Gary Gensler's perspective, everything is clear. And we are covering the Chevron the other day, yesterday morning. We're talking about, other things that Gary Gensler has tried to do, taking a unilateral approach to creating some sort of regulation on cryptocurrency. And it's not in the purview. They don't have the authority nor the jurisdiction to write law. And here's Gary Gensler just kind of making it up as though it's okay and no one's going to be paying any attention. Although we've seen this multiple times from these agencies that they just decide on their own. You have an unelected bureaucrat that's going to start making some decisions. Now we start looking at least we have something to talk about. There's positive movement, whether, there's some issues with it. At least what we can say for countries in the EU, that they're moving towards some sort of regulatory framework. But if it handcuffs them, then that's when you just got to start making amends to it. And that's going to be hopefully a net positive in that case.
Yeah, hopefully. So Jeff, do you remember, what was the last Ripple event called over there in Amsterdam? What was it called?
Which event?
The Ripple event they just had 2 weeks ago.
The Apex.
Yeah, the Ripple Apex. So interestingly enough, like Jeff, just without even like we never had this discussion, but what was one of the worst interviewers that was there? You remember the guy who interviewed? So we said, "Oh my gosh, this interview is it's just not going well."
That's right. Yeah, is he coming on the show?
No, he's not coming on the show, but he's back at it. Now this is the best part. Like we reach out to Ripple. Been doing this for what 4 or 5 years now in the space. They
come on the show,
ignore that. They ignore the hell out of you because that's what they do. And they like to go with more. They like to go with people that have no clue what's going on in life because that's just how they roll. So he's back. He's back. Frank Chaparro, the guy who did arguably the worst interview at Apex with Brad Garlinghouse and David Schwartz. And he's here with another banger of an interview.
Missed every great opportunity.
And you can't, I just want to go wake him up. I just want to shake him a little bit. So now he's got Monica Long on there, but we can't get Garland. We can't get anybody over there from Ripple to come on. Pretty much what used to be an XRP themed broadcast. David Schwartz, he jokingly told me when I saw him in New York that he can't do it because Brad won't let him. Of course, that's just his sense of humor. But this is the best part. Like they can't come on this show, right? But they can go on this guy here because he owns the block, which I don't know. It's an okay crypto. So once in a while they have some pretty good stuff in there. But this is it. I tried watching this and it didn't get very far. But I just thought it was interesting that here we are again. That
he's got a good person to bring on.
Yeah, Monica Long would be great to bring on this show. I have a lot of things I want to ask, but maybe they don't. Maybe they want pre-arranged questions. They don't want to get into anything, and maybe they just want to be like.
We don't really do that.
No, we don't do that. So that's part of the problem. I'm sure Frank has the approved questions. Like, all right, Frank, this is what you're going to ask, and this is what I'm going to say, right? So you just can't ask like any sort of question. So when we think about the debate that just aired, something interesting from a perspective of going back in history, right? You go back and you look at some of the like Reagan comes to mind, right? So Reagan, this is probably one of the most famous things ever said. And this was, it came up about Reagan's age at the time, because at the time, Reagan was the oldest. When he was running for re-election, he was running against Walter Mondale in 1984. And the whole idea of this age thing came up. And I thought it was kind of interesting because now age is floating around. It really isn't age. It's more about competency. But listen to Reagan, how he handles this question that was from the debate with Walter Mondale in 1984.
You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Question. Look at Mondale. Mondale's even laughing. That's how you handle it. That's how the great communicator handled it, right? That
was great.
Yeah, that was one of the phenomenal lines that a takeaway that you'd actually remember, and is making its rounds again. And there was another one too. So since we're on the subject of Ronald Reagan, let's do this one here. This is Reagan telling a joke.
Did you hear the story about the kid who was outside the Democratic fundraiser selling kittens? When the people came out from the fundraiser, he was holding up the kittens and he was saying, "Buy a Democrat kitten." Well, a couple of weeks later, the Republicans held a fundraiser in the same place. And when they came out, there was the same kid with the kittens. And he said, "Buy a Republican kitten." And one of the members of the press who'd seen him there 2 weeks before said, "Wait a minute, kid. You were selling these kittens the last time as Democrat kittens. How come the Republican kittens now?" Kid says, "Because now they got their eyes open."
You gotta love Ronald Reagan, man.
Oh,
you gotta love him, man. I mean, knew how to tell a joke, knew how to keep it funny. A lot of decorum back there, and they hated him. They try to kill him, Jeff. They try to like shoot. It's like they despised him to no end. They wanted him out. They tried to sabotage him. I mean, it's pretty much the same as it is today. Nothing changes, right?
The whole Star Wars program. Remember they mocked him. They said he was crazy. They went, the whole thing over the Star Wars program, and where did it end up? It ended up, it was probably one of the more critical elements, of the Cold War, of the whole program, competing or,
Well, it was a brilliant strategy. He's like, okay, build whatever missiles you want. We're going to shoot them out from. We're going to shoot them. We're going to destroy them from space. So good luck. Like it was like a one-up you. It's like, yeah, sure, we'll shoot those. We'll have long-range missiles. Okay, go ahead. We'll knock them down from space. So
right,
that was beyond the Iron Dome. That was like the World Dome, right? It was like the whole, coverage of the U.S. It was pretty remarkable in a lot of ways. So I thought that was pretty good. But you gotta love Ronald Reagan, man. He's a good dude. Let's talk about Bill Ackman. So Bill Ackman is he's now calling himself an independent, I think, Jeff, but he was, for all intent and purposes, a hardcore Democrat, like a lot of these guys, right?
It's been interesting watching his progression over the past few months, and really a lot of it stemmed from the atrocities committed by the terrorist group Hamas against Israel, and then the subsequent rise in anti-Semitism within the Democrat Party, and the hate that started or revealed itself October 8th throughout the U.S., primarily within the halls of, again, the Democrat Party, and the silence from the rest of those in the Democrat Party that didn't do enough to silence the kind of the agenda, coming from within. And it's kind of crazy. It's astonishing. But as we start seeing this transition period of thought, and so he started posting, there were tweets or X posts of shock to what we're going to go through right now, which is, and you see this a lot when people start getting red pilled. You start seeing a little bit. It's like, oh, I'm upset with them. There's still a little bit of denial.
Yeah, right.
Right. And then they start, then they slowly they start waking up and they start lifting their head up. And then all of a sudden there's a point of realization when they're like, oh my God. And he's kind of at that point right now.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of like ex-smokers, right? So the people that like are crazy about smoke are the ones that used to be smokers. They go mental. They're like, who's smoking? Like, and everybody else would be just like maybe mildly bothered by it. But like the ex-smoker gets really crazy about it, like X anything. And it is interesting to watch Ackman he's gone back and forth with Mark Human a little bit here and there, and they've been kind of blasting each other. But it started with that. But the other thing too is Ackman, he's a billionaire, and Ackman had a lot of money earmarked. I forgot which university he used to support, but he gave a pretty solid donation. Why would he want to give a donation to a university that is allowing, this massive, like out of control anti-Semitism on their campus? Right. I mean, any other thing, if it had been a Donald Trump rally, that would have been shut down in about 20 minutes. Right. It's like, but and they're like, oh, it's freedom. They remember you had the 3 university heads that went into Congress, and that was just an absolute abject failure. When they were, when Elise Stefanik, cornered one of them and said, well, hey, what are you talking about? She would read something and be like, well, we can't really judge. You can't judge. So it was pretty insane, but it's kind of interesting to see this. So Ackman goes on, he says, as much as last night talking about the debate was an indictment on the Democrat Party for misleading party members in the country about the mental acuity and health of the president, the media deserve far more derision and scorn. Now, this is crazy coming from Ackman. He says, I and others were repeatedly criticized by the media for questioning the competency of the president. Among other false accusations, I was accused of spreading misleading videos which clearly showed Biden's deterioration. Remember, the White House press secretary, she called it cheap fakes, not deep fakes, cheap fakes.
Cheap fakes. And this is kind of the common theme that we've seen for the past 3 years, right? If you show the truth, they immediately come out and they attack, they debunk it. They say it's not true. The problem with it is that the media has been complicit in it. Those in the inner circle have been complicit. And then it gets embraced by the common person that's watching the media. And we're talking about media, we're talking about across all the news channels. It's the same messaging. And it's almost they're coming through your screen, and people are being brainwashed into specific talking points. And to his point, here he is trying, and we saw this during the COVID time. Doctors were coming out and saying this is nonsense. Here's how we can treat and prevent COVID. And the political echelon and the media attack them, and they try to censor them and remove them from the community. And here he is, same thing, false accusations, accused of spreading misleading videos. Now, the whole point is, in someone's condition like with Biden, it happens over periods of time. And it didn't start yesterday. It didn't start a week ago. It didn't start a month ago. Everyone's been talking about it for the past 3 years. We've seen a deterioration. You can make claim if you go back and watch a video. We're watching one of the videos from 2019, and he was lucid at that point. But even at that point, you could point to fact to where he was already deteriorating, and it could be small things. So that the person that should be held to the highest level of accountability for this is his wife, because she knows 100% that he's been suffering from mental debilitation through dementia, and beyond that. There's no way she doesn't know. And so here she is propping him up as the wife, knowing that he's had all these issues. And we're not talking, maybe it was small in the beginning, but it got progressively worse. The shock, and it's shocking to see how the media still will remain complicit, even though we saw the meltdown after the quote unquote debate, the complete meltdown. There are still members of the inner circle and the media that are coming out, and basically they're trying to exonerate him. It's the craziest thing. Yet they're going to attack someone like a Bill Ackman.
Well, they also went after his wife. Remember, they went after his wife too. Like, that was out of bounds. Like, if you have a beef with him, and they started making comments with her, it's insane, right? I mean, the whole thing is insane on a level that we've really never seen before. Now, it's okay. All jokes aside, the man is not healthy. It's pretty sad to watch it. I mean, there's some apathy that I have of. There's a point where he doesn't know what's going on anymore. He just doesn't. So It does, like you said, Jeff, it falls to his wife, who knows better and just loves being first lady and just wants to. I mean, the one that's closest to him should be saying, you know what, Joe, you're not up to it. You did your best, whatever. And even Reagan in the last year did a lot of slipping, right? It was the last year of his term. There were some mental things. We saw a little bit of slippage, but nothing like this. And Bill goes on to say that, do you remember the heavily excerpted and edited POTUS Biden 60 Minutes interview, where the interviewer covered for the president by saying he was very tired? 60 Minutes knew. The New York Times knew. CNN knew. MSNBC knew. Left-wing media had total and complete access to the president, his staff, the administration. They all knew, but they told you otherwise. They outright lied to you. And when Robert Hur, the special counsel who deposed the president, said that the president was not fit to stand trial and therefore chose not to bring charges, the media described him as a tool of the Republican Party and character assassinated him. And when the Wall Street Journal recently published a several thousand word, this was just like a couple days ago, carefully researched front page piece on the president's mental and physical health, it was described by the left-wing media as outright propaganda. Now consider who has been feeding you the propaganda. A favorite technique of some of the most evil leaders in history was to mislead people by constantly repeating the big lie. The big lie is so audacious that people accept it as truth because it's repeated so often that how can it now be something so important and material that could be an outright falsehood? And this big lie was our president's fitness for office, let alone a second term, which is what I was getting to. Like, who's running the country, Jeff? Like, who's waking up at 3 a.m. if there's a conflict? The man who's supposed to be making the call is unable to make the call. So what do we have? Who's behind the scenes? A handler, an intern? Like, who's actually pulling the strings here?
Well, we heard in that interview with Obama, he came out and said he would, if he could be president without being president, and have a third term and talk in somebody's ear. And then
from the basement,
sure enough, from the basement, and sure enough, here we are. We have someone that's been placed in the position because they discredited the previous president. President Trump. They did everything in their power to undermine him for 4 years with lies, deception, media involvement, social media involvement. They did everything they could to undermine him and then put Biden into place. And there's still, an unknown variable as to the theft of the election in 2020. And it needs to be researched.
Of course.
And it has to have its moment without being discredited by media, because none of these people in media are trustworthy. I don't trust them. I would never trust them. I'm not going to trust anybody like a Gary Gensler to all of a sudden say, hey, he's telling the truth all of a sudden.
Of course.
Right. Or a Fauci. Oh, yeah. All of a sudden he's telling the truth, or anyone in that circle. You're going to look at them and say, look, you've already lied to us. You can fool me once, but you fool me twice. It's not shame on you, it's shame on me. Right. For allowing us to be and this is where Ackman, he tried. He's done everything, to try to believe that they at least had some good intent. But now what happened this past week, all of their lies are coming to light across the board, because all of them tried to defend that he was mentally fit. All of them. And that lie alone means that they've been lying about everything else, because he's not making the decisions. Other people are making the decisions. That's not how this country works. That's not how the founders wrote the Constitution. It's a separation of power, and there's a president for a purpose. And the executive branch isn't everybody else making decisions, and the president can be mentally unfit. That's not how this works. And so, we have a major issue. Well, we're at a crossroads right now, and people like Ackman are seeing it.
Yeah, I remember responding to one of these posts that he put up. I'm like, this is a very simple procedure. And again, you can fault Jill Biden. Okay, great. You can fault her. You can fault the media. But who hasn't stepped up? Who, after this debate, the Democrat Party, the Republican Party, okay, the first thing they do is they call for a mental, assessment, right? This is the first thing that they do. It has some kind of an assessment, right, to test his mental. And it came up during the debate as well. And he's never had one. So you say, hey, listen, because of that debate, you got to have one. Okay. He doesn't want to have one, right? Because obviously we know what's going to happen. But let's suppose he does, and it says he's unfit. Well, what happens? He leaves, and then who becomes president? When you think about it, Biden was Obama was very strategic. He picked a ding-dong named Biden because that was his insurance policy, right? That was his insurance policy, that nothing would happen to Obama because no one wanted Biden. Biden was installed. He wasn't elected. And if you think about Biden, who was his insurance policy? Well, it's Kamala Ding Dong, right? She's one of the dumbest humans on the planet. I mean, arguably, even when they had 16 or 17 candidates running along with Joe, she was out before they even got to the primary. Like, that's how bad she was. She didn't even make it far enough to get to a primary, to get to Iowa, they didn't even get that far. She was already out. It was like in January. She was out in Iowa, I think was March. This is how ridiculous it is. And when he talks about the sad reality is one of our most important institutions, the so-called fourth estate, fourth only after the clergy, nobility, and the commoners, has destroyed any remaining credibility he has. And I saw something else that he just put out, although I can't find it, but he basically said that the family wants Joe to stay. Well, of course they do. Well, I know, is anybody surprised? But where's the Democrat and Republican Party? This is one of the few things, aside from Fit 21, which put some guardrails up about crypto and talked about exactly what the rules of the road were. This is one of the only things that they actually agree on. So why wouldn't they call for that? Well, it poses a lot of problems for the Democrats. We talked yesterday about 3 states that the only way he can get off of the ballot is by the 25th Amendment or death. That's it. So if they put somebody new in, 3 states will not have Biden on. Will have Biden on the as far as a choice, but he may not be the person running. So there's a lot of issues with trying to put somebody else in. I don't care if it's Gavin Newsom. He's almost a record worse than Biden, if you can believe it. I don't care if it's Michelle Obama, Big Mike. It doesn't really matter who they put in there because the Democrats have lied to you. They have manipulated. They have. I mean, it reminds me, Jeff. You remember the Iraq War? You had Baghdad Bob. He's like, "We're winning this war," and meanwhile, we were like steamrolling, like in 2 days, just toppled. And he's like, "We're on to victory." And you thought to yourself, like, you almost felt bad for the guy. You're like, "Right, I get it, dude. You're a paid shill mouthpiece, but it's just ridiculous." But no. Fast forward 30 years later, and then it's our media doing the same thing. Oh, that's victory. Right. He's sharp behind the scenes. Everything's fantastic. We can't believe how sharp he is. He's so critical. He's so mental. His mental acuity, it's just, and his prowess is like beyond anything we've ever seen, right? This is about 10 days ago.
10 days ago. Yep. And so Brent says, I love you guys, but why always political? The thing is, we can't just constantly talk about the cryptocurrency and the DeFi space and blockchain and the development. We talk about that. If you lose an election, if you don't understand the politics involved in everything, you're going to get more Gary Genslers. You're going to get more Fauci's. You're going to get more corruption. You're going to get more Maxine Waters running the Financial Services Committee that takes any crypto legislation and buries it and lets it die in committee before it gets the light of day. You have to understand the politics of it. We have to understand the issue. Everything is politics. As soon as people wake up and realize that everything is politics, the financial markets, every part of everything, the whole, it's all interwoven. And if you only focus on one thing and then you ignore the other, right now, what we saw, it has to be talked about. We have to talk about what happened this past week. We have to talk about those that are waking up to it. We have to take it a step further because the crypto community, there's some people within the crypto community that are conservative, that want to adhere to our constitutional principles. We have people in other countries that believe in freedom. The one unifying factor of blockchain, decentralization, and cryptocurrency is freedom, putting the power back into the hands of the people. But we have to understand what that means, because if we're going to put the power back into the hands of the people, then you have to make sure that you're ready for it, because there's a lot of crazy things that are happening right now, and it's critical all over the country. Look at the direction France is going right now. France, they dissolved their parliament. Their voting started today. They have another vote a week from now. That's going to bring in a new parliament. Hopefully it goes right and doesn't stay left, because if it stays left, that's the end of France, right? We've seen where the UK is going. We're seeing Europe. We just talked about the legislation with the new crypto policy for the EU. Now, how is that going to benefit the EU if you don't have the people that are going to say, hey, we have the power? We want it to benefit us. So this is what it's so critical about it, Chip. I mean, where am I off about that?
No, you're absolutely spot on. And I know we do get political, but I mean, listen, the whole idea of this whole idea of freedom, the whole idea of decentralization is a threat to all governments, because what people wake up one day and says, well, we don't need to send a representative to represent me anymore to the capital city on my behalf, because as things go and as things grow, you have this whole concept of decentralization. Well, guess what else you don't need with decentralization? That whole idea of that intermediary. You no longer need a central bank. It's a massive threat to the central bank, and this is where the EU, they're treading lightly, because these are the people who are the power people that the crypto industry, this whole idea of blockchain and decentralization, is going to unseat. And it's all tied together, like Jeff said. It's all politics. Here's another Reagan quote. Thomas Jefferson once said, "We should never judge a president by his age, only by his works." And ever since he told me that, I stopped worrying. I love Reagan, man. What a great dude. I mean, you can be self-deprecating humor like that. I mean, nothing gets better than that, and that was another thing too. Trump did a lot of self-deprecating humor.
Yep. So Chip, just we don't, there's a lot in here. We don't have to go through all this, but Ackman, coming from the tweet, the post that we just read, coming to this one, he said, "I keep finding articles today which say dismissively that Biden had a bad debate, but the articles go on to say so did Obama and others, and they were able to recover and win the office." This is such a corruption of the event that took place. How stupid do they think everybody is? Now, the problem is Obama came out and made that statement. He came out and said, well, I also had a bad debate. Now, he's in the inner circle. He knows what's going on with this individual. He was there with him for 8 years, so you can't tell me that he doesn't know. Here, Bill Ackman succinctly puts it this way. The issue, however, was not that Biden had a bad debate. Rather, in just a few minutes, the entire world, including all of our enemies, became definitively aware, if they were not already, that the president of the United States is not fit for office, let alone a second term. Now, here's the wake up. This is not just an issue of Biden's fitness for office. It's an issue of national security.
Absolutely. 100%.
That is amazing. Now, Chip, this is where it gets really interesting, because people then say, well, Biden goes in and out of moments of lucidity, right? So we saw how he can handle himself when he doesn't have a teleprompter, when he's on the moment, he has to answer and he has to discuss, and it has to come directly from his brain. So Ackman said, we know from the rally the day after the debate that Biden is still capable of reading from a teleprompter. But being president of the United States requires more than reading words written by others. Leadership requires world-class executive function, which in Biden's case is clearly profoundly impaired. Now, Chip, I read that. I looked at that. And then I saw this other post that came up. And he starts talking about, said it's simple. Joe Biden was not required to use this is from Real Meat Kevin, said Joe Biden was not required to use the faculty of his brain that is handicapped. At the early onset of dementia, individuals' ability to remember short and long-term thoughts begins to deteriorate. However, they can still read and speak. Joe Biden yesterday in North Carolina was like State of the Union Joe. He seemed strong, and people wondered, did the drugs run off? Did his cold cure overnight? Is he just able to perform because it's early? No, the answer is simple. Joe Biden was able to read a teleprompter script fed to him by his staff at the exact pace he would read it at his rally and the State of the Union. So he's reading. He can read when it's somebody else's script. As soon as he had to go into his own script, he's not capable. And I look at those two things together, Jib, and Ackman is eyes wide open. He's a very powerful voice to be waking up. The question is, what happens next?
Yeah, it is what happens next. But here's something here. So this is what I saw one of his posts. Ackman was talking about. He talked to a doctor, but I responded to Brian Costello, who we got to get on this show. I interact so much with Brian Costello. So he says bad people operate 24/7, not just during senior discount hours. Is this supposed to make America feel better? And he's talking about Frank Luntz saying, well, from 10 to 4, Biden's really engaged, and his public events are in front of cameras, and everything's good. But something that I know from a personal level, from a personal experience, people with Alzheimer's, dementia do better in the morning and afternoon. There's not a surprise here. Here's an excerpt from the Alzheimer's Association. Sundowning is increased confusion that people living with Alzheimer's and dementia may experience from dusk through the night. It's also called sundowner syndrome, and it's not a disease, but it's a set of symptoms of dementia-related behaviors, and that was on full display. So what Ackman consulted a doctor. The doctor's hypothesis was he has onset of dementia, which is progressively worse, maybe mixed with a little bit of Parkinson's because of his restriction of movement. That's a doctor's sort of assessment of it, but it's sad. But this is what's really going on, is this whole idea of Alzheimer's, right? So you tell me that the doctor that's supposed to be monitoring the president of the United States, who doesn't know that this is a diagnosis, we don't know the pills he's getting. You know, Trump said, like, hey, take a drug test. I'll take a drug test. And of course, he's not going to take the drug test. And the whole idea wasn't, people are like, well, they're pumping up with drugs. But is he taking Parkinson's med? Is he taking, medication for Alzheimer's onset of dementia? And the doctors was basically saying that this is going to get worse, a lot worse, before it gets better. It's going to get progressively worse. So it doesn't matter what we think he's going to do or how he's going to end up running. It's just not going to happen. So it is a sad thing, because here we are, the president, and we all came to the realization, like, oh yeah, everybody woke up and now everybody's being truthful. He also repeated other lies, like, the very fine people, which was debunked by Snopes, an ultra left leaning. They finally came clean, and they finally said, no, that's not what he said. Why? Because that made the rounds 2 weeks ago that showed exactly what he said. I watched another video by somebody that said, hey, you know how I got on the Trump train? I was in a doctor's office and I was listening to one story but that was happening on CNN about something Trump said at a rally. And I said, wow, that's horrible. And she said, the very next thing is I went to my next meeting, and Fox News was on there talking about the very same event, but they spun it a different way. So she said, I went back and listened to it for myself and realized that Fox was talking about what really happened in the context where CNN was making an excerpt. And she said, and I started looking back at other things and realizing what a freaking lie it was. What an absolute lie that it was.
Yep. Yeah. So Chip, this is interesting. You see such bright comments on X. This is from Daniel. You look, he has a degree in history, politics, Iranian studies, a PhD in history of international relations, and so Senate, current House. But this is so interesting. Why he's saying they can't remove Biden, right? Why they won't acknowledge what's happening, and now they can't do anything. He says here, what Obama probably grasped and others miss is what replacing Biden in these circumstances for this reason would mean. He is president. If he cannot exercise the duties of a candidate, he can't exercise those of president. And if the party admits it, then it means they admit they lied. Right? This is not Biden deciding on his own he cannot do the job. This is other Democrats deciding he will lose because too many people found out. It's bad enough for voters to suspect you lied. It's another to admit it. For over a year, every major Democratic figure has come forward to gush about Biden's cognitive abilities in private. To force him out now is to admit they were gaslighting the American people, gaslighting them over the most important and consequential issue imaginable. This is doubly true of any plan to displace Harris. To suggest that not only is Biden unfit to be president, but so is Harris to succeed him is to admit that the Democratic elite, for its own ends, installed a president and vice president who are unfit for office at a time of domestic and global crisis. Furthermore, that for the next 7 months, including the campaign, America will be governed by two individuals whose own party has repudiated as competent for their roles, all because the voters trusted the Democrat Party. For the Democrat Party to go into November with the above message and then expect the voters to forgive them is akin to the UK conservatives believing that the UK electorate will award Rishi Sunak for removing Liz Truss after she crashed the economy. Obama gets this. And this was, he's commenting on Obama. He gets more, deeper into it. But I'm reading this and I'm like, you know what? He's onto something. There's a good reason why they can't, they're playing damage control now. That's why Obama stepped in. There's that inner circle are stepping in. Jill Biden, no, he's fine. There's no issue. No, it's just bad performance. So now they're going to try to simmer down the media because so the media is shocked. What can they do when everything's falling apart? The guy was confusing abortion rights from illegal immigrants, and it was so embarrassing. But now they're going to play spin, because if they do say we have to enact the 25th Amendment to remove him, that's admitting everything. And now there has to be an investigation as to why they're removing him. That they have to dig in deeper, and then the medical studies, and then it's going to go deeper. More information comes out. It's like doing discovery in a law case. What happens at that point?
Well, also too, Jeff, let's suppose, and so let's suppose they keep the charade up and they say he's still running, but then at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention in August, the delegates, nobody else, the delegates are going to choose somebody new. And the problem with that is now they're going to put somebody else up. It doesn't matter who it is, but you're basically telling the voters that you're going to leapfrog the person you said was the best choice for vice president, because usually vice president is sometimes president in training, right? That's somebody that is going to be competent to maybe run the next time. Now you're telling somebody against Kamala Harris, you're going to put somebody in front of her and you're going to try to weasel her out of there. So what are you doing? Like you're absolutely suicide mission here with your own party. And that's like another part. And then not only that, but you got a person of color that's going to be leapfrogged by what? A Gavin Newman? Some dude, some white slick dude from California that's basically destroyed that entire state. Now he's more formidable than Kamala Harris because she's been the VP for 3 years. There's a lot going on here, Jeff. I wanted to show this one scene because somebody pointed this out, and I watched this live, Jeff, but I didn't catch this. But Trump he actually refers to Biden as Brandon. Listen closely.
In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in caravans.
President Trump.
Now, whoever decided to have these two on the screen at the same time, right? Trump looks angry. He's got that sort of permanent scowl on his face. He looks angry. He's looking at the camera. Once in a while, he'd do one of these, like, what? Now, all this training, and he was there for a week, and they were prepping him. Did they not say, like, look in the camera and smile? Gosh, I think it was, it was the guy that used to do the Daily Show. He said, let's see how bad his performance was when he wasn't speaking. And he just showed bits of his face, looking down this side. He didn't even have to say anything. And what he was communicating was horrific. But that was him. And then there was this other little bit that I must have missed too, Jeff. This one I somehow missed. I don't know if you saw this bit, but
God, that's loud.
That was super loud.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought that was funny. And then there's another rising star in the Republican Party, and his name is Mark Robinson. And Mark Robinson, he's running for the governor of North Carolina. And God bless, I hope this guy gets in because he's pure fire. But listen to what he said.
Joe Biden's doing a wonderful job. And he's a nice man, because that President Trump is just mean. I just don't like the things that he says. He's just mean and arrogant, and he's a bully. If I hear that one more time, I am going to go crazy. This man is fighting. Let's list the people who he's fighting. He's fighting almost the entire news media. He's fighting all the Democrats. He's fighting all the communists. He's fighting all the socialists. He's fighting all of our enemies across the ocean. And sadly, he's fighting half the Republicans. How is this man a bully? How is he a bully? See, we hear that at work sometimes. Some of us are a little shy about stepping up, standing up, saying anything. People look at us and say, why are you a Republican? We say, well, My mom voted Republican. I like Ronald Reagan. I think he did a great job, and I like Reagan. And so that's why I'm a Republican. We shy away from the truth. We don't want to look at that person and say, you know, well, wasn't it the Republican Party that was formed? Stand up for the Republic, not the democracy like you see played on the news every day. You see, them folks want a democracy. They want the mob to rule. They don't want this republic. And they don't want Republicans standing up for the republic.
That's right. Yeah, that guy's solid.
Boom. I love that guy. I can listen to him all day long, man. Mark Robinson,
He's
the
good.
next governor of North Carolina. And God, do they need a good governor? They certainly need somebody.
President Biden is the oldest president in U.S. history. Why does White House staff treat him like a baby?
No one treats the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, like a baby.
So there's this book that says
That's ridiculous.
When staff
That's a ridiculous claim.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the
You answered all the questions and you knew all the answers. And God, look at the poor guy. Look at his face.
So pathetic.
It's
So
sad,
bad.
really.
It's so sad. He's not there. You know, you could tell he's just not there, you know. Screen says 6. 6 what?
Yeah, what does that mean? 6. What does that mean exactly?
No, it's man.
No, I don't think. Honestly, I think this would be a listen. I think anything that they do is going to be a massive disaster and blow up in their face. If it's Michelle Obama, if it doesn't matter. Even Gretna Whitmer, first of all, she's hated in Michigan, and she's been a horrific governor. Gavin Newsom, whatever his name is. You know, it doesn't matter who they pick. It really doesn't matter. They've already destroyed themselves, right? And, you know, you never interrupt your enemy when they're in the process of destroying themselves, and they're doing a fantastic job. There's no intervention here by the Republicans, although the Republicans could call for a mental acuity test and say, like, well, don't you think we should have it? I mean, the fact that people are walking on eggshells and you got a guy who they're spoon feeding pablum to, it's like, open up, Joe, here comes the airplane. You know, I mean, it's sad, really. It's a sad state of affairs. This is where we are. Right after that thing, they should have flown him right to a doctor, taken the test, and boom, he's gone. 25th Amendment, special session in Congress, and it's over, right? Unanimous over.
But then what?
Then you
who
got
gets to replace
Kamala Ding Dong.
And you've got Kamala. That they did it on purpose because they knew. Like, who are you going to have replace? You know, here's another one. This was Vivek Ramaswamy. He said, if you were shocked by what you saw last night, as many of my centrist and Democrat friends were, ask yourself, why were you shocked? Biden's cognitive deterioration has been evident for a very long time. If you weren't aware of it or were convinced those claims were right-wing conspiracies, that tells you something important about the quality of the news you're consuming and the institutions you trust. Ask yourself whether it's possible that those same outlets which lied to you about the mental fitness of the sitting president might have lied to you about anything else. Look into the Russian collusion hoax, the fine people and the bleach hoaxes, the origin of COVID, Hunter Biden, the evidentiary basis for climate change policies or pediatric gender affirming care. Seek out original sources and uncut video footage instead of relying on the filter of mainstream media coverage. Ask yourself this too. Who's actually running the country? Do you honestly believe Joe Biden's in charge? Is the deep state a conspiracy theory, or is it a reality hiding in plain sight? You know,
Vivek is on fire, dude. On fire. Yeah, and he's absolutely right. But I think this is so I challenge people on the internet. I posted this and I said, I challenge you to get to the end. Nobody could do it. I think somebody got 30 seconds in. Right. And so this is Kamala Harris, Kamala. I don't know how you say it. I call her Kamala Ding Dong. But anyway, this is her. I don't think we're going to get through the whole thing, but you're going to get the gist of it after the beginning. It's like torture. If you wanted to torture somebody, you would just play this. And this is her famous quote.
Imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened unburdened by what has been. What can be. Unburdened by what has been. What we can see, what we believe can be, unburdened by what has been. What can be, unburdened by what has been. What can be, unburdened by what has been. What can be, unburdened by what has been.
What can be, unburdened by what has been.
Who we can be, unburdened by who we have been. What can be, unburdened by what
It's impossible. You can't make it.
Where we can be, unburdened by where we have been, and unburdened by where we are right now. What can be, unburdened by what has been. What can be, unburdened by what has been.
All right, you get the gist. This is torture, Jeff. We're not even how far. I mean, we're not even a minute in. It's 4 minutes of this, and they're all different takes. I mean, seriously,
Jeff.
Jeff.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
She's giving,
what could be
oh my God.
unburdened by what had been.
What does this even mean? Does anybody even know what this means?
Can you
tell
tell me
she was
she
a
was a
cheerleader?
cheerleader?
I can't tell she did anything before. I don't know what she's done.
What
I mean,
can be unburdened by what has been.
We're
What
talking
can
about
be
yellow buses.
unburdened by
yeah, the short
what
bus,
has
Jeff.
been. What can be unburdened
Yeah.
by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What
Racist,
can
please
be
stop.
unburdened by what has
By
been.
what has been.
Unburdened by what has been, believing in what can be. What can be
So it was a little bit spit.
unburdened
I wish I was unburdened by XRP.
By
Alchemist,
XRP.
by what has
Alchemist
been.
bringing the funny. Yeah, we can't listen to this anymore. Anyway,
I can't listen to it. You know what's crazy though? When she's saying that, you can see in her brain, she probably thinks she's this,
she's
great
landing.
orator, and she's up there like she's giving
What-
this,
not Jeff.
this deep sermon, and she's
Jeff,
like,
let me
"What
test
has
you.
been?"
Let me test you. What is the
What's up
quote?
with the hands?
Tell me what the quote is. We heard it 40 times. What's the quote? I don't know. It doesn't make any
What?
sense.
What you've been,
No,
what you will
it's
be,
not.
what you will be needs to be unburdened by where you've been.
No, what has been? So listen to it again.
What has been?
What can be.
What can be? What
by
can
what
be
has
needs
been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has.
We watched it 40 times. We still didn't know what she said. It's like, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, right? This is who's on deck to become president right here. What's unburdened by what can be, unburdened by what has been.
I think she's talking about the future of XRP.
She
I
might
think
be.
that's what it is, because think about the burden of
What can be,
what
unburdened
can
by
be,
XRP.
and it's unburdened by what's been. We've been through, how many years of this lawsuit.
Technical analysis.
I think she's
for
talking.
SLM.
I think her brain might have shorted
Kamala
because
Wordsmith.
she invests in the crypto space, so her brain short circuited with this.
Kamala Wordsmith. That brought
We have to
that
be
about wraps it
unburdened
up
from
right
where
there.
we've been. We got to be
Yeah.
unburdened.
We got to be unburdened from both of those knuckleheads in the White House. That's what we have to be. And November 3rd can't come fast enough. I mean,
A
can of bourbon can be. That's right. How about this one? ASM Future says, I never want to be burdened by something more than any time in my entire life. I actually said, I said, I dare you to get to the end of this video. Watch to the end of the video. You can't do it. It's impossible. Someone got 30 seconds in. You're like, you're right, Chip, I can't do it. Somebody actually got a minute in. They're like, I did a minute. I couldn't take it anymore.
Joe Burden. Ray needs a drink after that.
We all need a drink, man.
I think we're all.
A neighborhood had a
lot
gramophone
less
which played in that
intelligent.
manner. Oh, God. Can you imagine? Oh, boy. A gramophone. Word
gramophone.
salad by Mamala. What unburdened by what has been. And apparently it didn't land, so she had to say it over and over and over and over and over again, right? Newsom is the last thing the country needs. He's done wonders for Cali. Yeah, and
Cali's awesome. It's great.
He doesn't even have the he isn't even popular in California. You don't run a guy that's not popular in California. And he was the big cheerleader that CNN had him on. He's like, I thought Biden did great. I'm like, okay, dude, we understand you're in the wings. We get it, winkety winks, we get it. Anywho, that's all the time we have, Jeff. What can be unburdened by what has been?
July rally. Oh, here we go. XRP. We're going to be unburdened by where we've been.
By what has been.
But what has been.
30 freaking times. We still don't even know.
What is the final from
was
the
too much
charts?
fun.
This is from the chart reader from the technical analysis of Kamala, what can be with XRP
Jeff, can you
needs to be
imagine?
unburdened from where it's been.
Can you imagine? Tina Hall says, I wonder if she can put that in a Venn diagram. Oh, jeez. Remember the
Well, you
Venn
got the
diagrams?
answers,
Oh,
though.
God, please, no. Please. I mean, you talk about walking on eggshells around that White House, man. They're like, she's a half step away from becoming the leader of the free world. Are you kidding me?
Stop saying it. Can't stop saying it.
We will stop saying it. I still don't even know what the quote is. I still don't know what the quote is. What has been unburdened by what has been. Yeah, thank you, Howard Dean. Appreciate that. Coming at the right time. I hope so, Ed. I mean, my God, it's been 74 years. My
God.
I want Biden to stay in so Trump wins by the biggest landslide ever. That's a good point, too. I honestly don't know. I've said it from the beginning. I've said like a year and a half ago, he won't be on the ticket, but he's not going to win. I know that. I'm just shocked. Evidence we have is about 50% of the nation is insane. Well, I mean, you can't say it any better than that. I mean, that's, where's the quote here? Do I have it? I don't think I have it up here. Here it is. There it is right there. Hashtag liberalism is a mental disorder, in case you haven't known.
It is.
That's all the time we have, guys. Jeff, take it.
Must be the fluoridated water.
Must be something. Doesn't matter.
Hey,
I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant, Tina. I knew it. I'm
good. Good job to England today.
Phenomenal
for crushing,
game. My God,
crushing their
30 seconds
crushing
left.
their game.
Ooh.
Yeah,
awesome.
that was intense.
That Kane header was just amazing. God, I loved it. It's fantastic. Quarterfinals, baby.
Yeah, some really solid games. Really solid games.
See what happens there.
Congratulations to all those Canadian fans out there for the Copa America. Canada, even though it was a push,
friendly,
0-0.
Right? Yeah.
No, it was actually the Copa
was
America.
It? Oh, was it a Copa America?
Canada playing Chile.
Yeah,
so
Chile won it twice. So
they just needed that. Even at a draw, Canada, came out ahead on that one. So there you have it.
John Doe's schooling where Taco and Taco Jill came from.
Yep. And then
Kamala says, "Hey, Mr. President, what can be unburdened can be ice cream." All right. Anyway, we got to get out of here. That was fun.
And then also Spain. Spain took out Georgia today.
Yeah,
4-1.
of course, dude. I mean, I was surprised Georgia even put a goal out there. I mean, it would have been weird if Georgia would have won. That would have been odd.
That would have been odd. But
Massive
even Slovakia leading England for the period of time they did until it was
right to the last 30 seconds, man. You never give up. You never let them come in, and they just took over the momentum, and it was over. I'm glad to see all my English friends too. Canada's
unburdened by what they've become.
Alchemist is just crushing it lately, man. It's fantastic to see.
On the burden.
Anyway, that was fun. Yeah, hey, I really appreciate you guys coming in here. Spain, Crypto Bag Boy. Yeah, Laurel says good night, guys. All eyes on the U.S. Absolutely. That's all we have. Let's take us out of here, Jeff. I'll play us out.
No, they didn't. They didn't have it.
That's true.
They didn't have it.
But England played horrible. I mean, I know they got that one goal taken away for the offsides, but still, they were lifeless. My God, most of that game.
Oh, and then Argentina won yesterday also.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Not surprising, but let's do it. Mexico, pretty cool. All right, guys, that's it. We're out of here. We will see you on the next one. Chip and Jeff out. See you guys on Wednesday.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.